Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. It is now 3:30 and everyone is here. So I will call the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Subcommittee to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, item 3 is delegations. There are none scheduled. Item number 4 is report of the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services. And 4.1 is the Stratford landfill public input invited November 2021. Mr. Prinklaw, did you want to talk to, or speak to this briefly?
Yeah, through the chair, sure. So the landfill is required to put out public input on a quarterly basis, and this go around we had one comment received regarding the increase frequency in household or hazardous waste collection dates. Unfortunately, the one thing I was mention is this has gone to a producer pay responsibility, but the funding allocated to the municipality doesn't remotely cover the cost to host these functions. So at this time, we have no plan to increase the frequency that we host the household hazardous waste days. Not to mention at the landfill facility, it would be quite more expensive. So we do recognize the desire for it, but at this time we have no intention on increasing that frequency.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Ingram?
Thank you. I was actually kind of excited to see that we actually got some comments because we don't often get comments related to this item when we go out to the public for feedback. So even just having one was pretty exciting. And I think this is something that we have heard repeatedly regarding hazardous waste collection. This is not the first time that we're hearing that. And if there is any way that we could look at doing it in a more cost-effective manner. So I hear you when you're saying that it's not cost-effective to do it at the landfill site itself, but if there is any way that we could to brainstorm some options to do it in a cost-effective manner, I think that might be helpful and our citizens would really like that.
Councillor Burbeck?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm wondering about the possibility of having drop-off bins for certain things. Like it wouldn't work for all hazardous waste, but for things like batteries or other items.
We've lost Councillor Burbeck, but did you want to speak to that, Mr. Prinklaw?
Yeah, sure. Through the chair. We do have battery drop-off locations at most public facilities. That is a good example of where that is relatively easy to address. Some of the other products are more difficult. I do recommend people to look on websites where they can drop it off. I know like used oil, most automotive places will be required to provide that service there. From our end, it's definitely a public engagement piece because there are opportunities to drop off such hazardous products. We'll work on that part. In terms of at the landfill site itself, we do have some environmental compliance approval requirements that we need to address first before we even can consider adding additional products being dropped off.
Thanks. Sorry for speaking of dropping off, sorry about that. Computer died suddenly.
So Councillor Ingram, did you want to make that as sort of a referral to staff to explore those possibilities, or is that something just to keep in mind for future?
Yeah, I won't make that a referral motion. I'll just I'll leave that with staff. I think they've heard the comments, they've received the comments from the public, so I think I'll just leave that with staff.
And I get the impression that staff are always looking at opportunities for additional drop-offs or other alternatives might come across their, certainly in talking with their, the colleagues in other municipalities and things like that. So I imagine if something comes along, they'll bring it back to us, hopefully. Okay, so if there's nothing further on this item, there is a staff recommendation that council consider any of the comments received and that the report dated November 2021 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Gaffney. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is item 5, which is report of the deputy clerk, and it's 5.1, which is 30-minute parking on Wellington Street. Mr. Bantock, did you want to cover the report for us?
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, staff received a request earlier this year from a business on Wellington Street seeking to have parking converted to 30-minute maximum during patio season. So the preferred recommendation, as shown in the report and on attachment 1, you'd see a year-round conversion of 6 parking spaces to a maximum of in 6 parking spaces to a maximum of 30-minute parking. In between, these will be installed in between the current 30-minute parking spaces at the north end of the street on Wellington and go down to the 2 current motorcycle spaces. So when staff were considering this, we worked with the BIA to send a survey out. We reviewed internal requirements, which included costs and infrastructure to make any of the changes, and then distributed letters to all businesses and property owners along Wellington Street between Downey and St. Patrick, where the impact would be most likely seen. We received 3 responses back to those letters, and all were in support of the preferred recommendation. Staff are also seeking approval for housekeeping amendments to the traffic and parking bylaw, just to update the schedule of the 30-minute metered zones. And if this is approved, there'll be just minimal costs incurred through the parking materials account for new signage, and a bylaw will be brought forward to give effect to the changes.
Thank you. And I had a quick question. So some of the parking pucks that were put in along Wellington Street, will some of that data actually help us in the future, knowing how these spaces are being used, how well they're being used, what the turnover is, things like that, and being able to make future decisions around where 30-minute spots are preferable?
Through the chair, yes. So that's the intent with putting those pucks in. We're taking a phased approach to the pucks at this time, just to put them in over a number of years where we can. And eventually the goal will be to have all of our paid spaces have those pucks installed. And as actually noted in the report, when we see technology like this through use of hotspot, we're able to track the time. And so we were able to use that to our benefit to be able to assess if we felt it was appropriate to how the extent to what we wanted to do with a 30-minute spots here on Wellington.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Ingram?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for bringing this forward. I know that the 30-minute spots and even some 15-minute spots have been a request from some BIA members recently. And so if we can expand beyond Wellington Street in the future, maybe along Albert Street or Downey Street, somewhere in those locations, I think you might find that they're beneficial in those areas as well. But thank you for bringing this forward.
Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may need an education here, but if we're putting in all these 30-minute parking spots, not just the ones we're talking about on Wellington Street, but Albert Street, Upper Erie, and on the Ontario Street lot, south side, I guess that's the one that used to be beside Dave Hunt's flower shop. Is that the parking lot we're talking about? On Ontario Street. Anyways, I have some difficulty with telling people that, and I speak specifically to local people, that if you're coming into downtown Stratford, you have 30 minutes to get your business done. So don't bother window shopping or going to 2 or 3 or 4 different places. What we're saying is go into the pharmacy, pick up your prescription, get back in your car and get the hell out of downtown, because we don't want you to hang around and maybe spend more money in downtown. So I have some difficulty with approving this thought. And if this is in any way, like it seems to be in, the original request was made in conjunction with the patio extensions we have for the last couple of years, I would not assume that we're going to approve the same patio arrangement next year just out of hand. That's going to be a serious discussion for the whole council. It's at some point in the spring, I expect, or maybe during the winter even. Yeah. So I need a better understanding of why we think it's so important to have these short-term parking spots, all these short-term parking spots, when we're trying to encourage people to go into downtown Stratford to do what they'd like to do instead of going out to the mall where they could park all day long and get done what they need to get done. So thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Bantock, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, just to address some of that. So the areas noted in the report that would be updated in Schedule 16 of the Traffic and Parking Bylaw, those are already currently 30-minute areas. It was just noted by staff when we were looking at this new area in bringing forward an update to the bylaw that those areas were missing. Not sure what happened there, but we're just making sure that the bylaw is up to date with how the current 30-minute zones are put in place. With respect to the patios, obviously those can change from year to year, and we don't know what that's going to look like next year. But the 30-minute meters and the new proposed 30-minute meters are a small percentage of the parking in the area, just to provide a little bit more turnover for shops that may want to see people coming in and out. But you do still have a significant amount of the parking in the area at your 4 hour maximum. And it was, again, just further to the request that was received, staff chose, instead of going just with changing to the patio season because of the confusion that might be undertaken with parkers and the signage and having to switch those in and out twice a year, it was viewed as being more efficient to just insert a smaller amount of the 30-minute meters year round, rather than changing more of them on a semi-annual basis.
Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Bantock. I appreciate what you're saying, but I still have, and when we talk about Downey Street between Albert and Wellington and Erie Street and the south parking lot, do we know what the history of that is? Does that go back to some other era when we didn't have the need for 3 hour, 4 hour parking in downtown for the Avant Theater, etc. And again, I don't understand why we want to bum rush people in and out of downtown. So that's sort of my confusion. Like I say, go into the pharmacy, pick up your prescription, and keep going. Getting a parking spot in downtown Stratford has always been a bit of a crapshoot. So you get the parking spot that's available to you, and you get out of your car and you see you only got 30 minutes. Well, then you're not going for lunch and you're not doing window shopping. So I don't quite get why we need these short-term parking spots, but I'm willing to be educated.
If I may take a couple minutes. So from my understanding, and I think Councillor Ingram can weigh in here if she wants to, it's about, there are a number of different services that are provided downtown that often people are needing to get something and aren't in a shopping sort of frame of mind or in a position. For example, if someone, and I'm just going to use a couple examples, but there are lots more of them. Sinclair Pharmacy may have, let's say, a parent, there's a child who has a fever or needs an antibiotic. That parent wants to go downtown, wants to park close enough to the pharmacy to pop in and pick up their prescription and then be able to leave and get home. If there aren't available 30-minute spots that turn over frequently, it reduces the number of people. So if all of the spots are taken up by 3 hour or 4 hour shoppers or people who maybe work downtown as well, then you do actually reduce the availability of certain specific services that aren't amenable to a day out shopping. There are people who work and will go, for example, to one of the sandwich shops to pick up takeout food for lunch. They'll pop in, that doesn't mean those people don't then shop downtown on the weekend, but there is a need, as people who may need to do their banking. There may be people that, my mother, for example, in the past, who would want to be able to have a spot close to the bank for half an hour to pop in and do their banking, but really isn't necessarily then going to pop into shops and do shopping. So, and I think as the deputy clerk pointed out, there aren't a lot of them, and they do tend to be, when the staff and the BIA look at these spots, they are looking for ones that are close to maybe some of those businesses and services that are providing a specific service. I think that's the theory behind it, about managing parking where you have short-term, long-term, overnight parking, and you distribute it depending on purpose and need. Councillor Ingram, do I have that right from the BIA?
Yeah, from the BIA's perspective, I mean, certainly some of the restaurant owners and cafe owners, the pharmacy, they've all requested these short-term parking spaces because people are just popping in and out. We have a number of different coffee shops. You have Balzac's, you have Edison's, you have Revel, you have things like Circle Foods, the Pulp Fresh Bar. People pop in, they grab their lunch, they grab a coffee, they grab something to eat, and then they're on their way. So in addition to all of the banks, all of a number of different the postal outlet at Blow Stationery, like people just want to pop in and out. They don't want to stay for a long time, and the turnover of these parking spaces is really helpful. Even the butcher and the baker, somebody's popping in to get their ingredients for their dinners, and then they head out again. So it just provides a mix of parking spaces so that there are long-term parking spaces for the people going to the theater or having a nice dinner out or doing some shopping. And then there's the short-term parking spaces for those people that just want that really quick, convenient, I'm in and out space within the core.
I had Councillor Burback and then Councillor Gaffney again.
Yeah, I'll be short because Councillor Ingram said a lot of the things I was going to say, because I do that regularly. I'll go to the butcher baker, I'll go get some soup, I'll go to the bank, and it's all within half an hour. And it is really nice to park close. But I think Mr. Bantock did a really good job of reaching out to the businesses, doing a survey. So we got a lot of feedback from the business owners themselves, and I think they would know what their customers would need. So I'm going to be supporting this because I see that the BIA does.
I don't speak for the downtown businesses. I speak for all the people of Stratford. So what I'm hearing is if I come around the corner off of Downey Street and these 6 spots are all full, I can just stop on Wellington Street and wait until somebody backs out? Or do I keep going and look for a parking spot that might be further away? That's going to give me 3 or 4 hours of time to go and do what I need to do. I think it's because the logic in this says to me that next year, Downey Street Burgers and the Black Swan want 6 half-hour parking spots in front of their stores for people that are just dropping in. Balzac's wants those 4 spots in front of their restaurant or their coffee shop, half an hour, so people can just pop in and get coffee. So I don't understand what the privilege is for this stretch of Wellington Street that, yes, if I'm going into Butcher and Baker to get some bread for my breakfast, yes, it'd be nice for me to be able to park right in front of their store and run in and get the bread. So, like I say, do I get to just stop on Wellington Street until one of those half-hour spots back out so I can slip into it and run in the butcher and baker or the pharmacy or the shoe store and run right back out again? Or do I do what makes sense, is go to Market Square, or maybe I have to park over on Downing Street, or maybe I have to drive around and park in the Erie Street parking lot. I just don't get what is so special about this half a block in downtown that is not going to get turned into every other half a block in downtown is going to want their 30-minute parking.
So really quickly, this isn't the only place we have a number of 30-minute parking spots. There are ones on Erie and we use them for the city because people want to just come in for half an hour to do city business. So we have actually made that exception. I would say that if there are other businesses that want something like this, then the data that we collect would have to support it. Not just a request from a business, but we would have to do, like staff have done with this particular case, do a survey, look at the counts, look at how the spots are being used, and look at how many other spots are available in close proximity. I would say, for example, Wellington Street, you have a huge parking lot, a very short walk away in Erie. Like there are a lot of things that go into it, not just simply the desires of the specific businesses. So Councillor Ingram, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And some of Councillor Gaffney's comments actually come back to my comments earlier related to, there might be some spots along Albert Street and Downey Street and potentially even Ontario Street that where 30-minute spaces do make sense. And again, it's just the minority of parking spaces. So yes, if you can't find a 30-minute spot and you want to pop in somewhere and you're on a time crunch, you do have to drive around and find another spot. It's no different than what you do now. If you can't find a spot in front of the store that you're looking for or the restaurant that you want to go to, and you just want to pop in, you drive until you find a spot to park. That's just the way it works. It just increases the ability for these spaces to turn over quickly without people parking there long-term all day long or what have you. It just gives other options to the people coming to our core.
And I guess the flip side of that is by having 30-minute spots there, you increase the probability that there will be available parking. It doesn't guarantee parking, and you don't just sit there and wait for someone to leave, but it should, by the nature of the 30-minute limit, increase the probability that there'll be turnover in those spots. So this has been a really great discussion. Councillor Ingram, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to move the staff recommendation, please.
Okay. And that's where I was going. That's great. Any other comments or questions or something somebody wants to say? So there is a staff recommendation that has been moved. It's about installing the 6 new 30-minute meters on Wellington Street. It's update to the schedule for parking to do some of that housekeeping for Albert, Upper Erie, and Ontario, and that the clerk be directed to bring forward a bylaw to amend the traffic and parking bylaw to give effect to the proposed changes contained in the report. So if no other questions or comments, all in favor? Opposed, if any? When opposed, thank you very much. So we'll move on now. Oh, Councillor Gaffney, yes, what?
That brings up a thought for me, and this is a general parking issue with the new system we have, which the feedback I've gotten from people, they think it's fantastic with the app-based parking program we do now. But it brings me to a question of, are we like now that, and this is my understanding of it, if I parked in Market Square, put in the information on my phone, and since we've gotten this system, I haven't been in downtown for 4 hours at any one time. But can you, if you're, for example, going to be in downtown Stratford for more than 8 hours or more than 30 minutes, can you just add time to your meter sitting in your office at one of the banks, for example? And I think this must be a question for Mr. Bantock.
Go ahead, Mr. Bantock.
Yeah, so through the chair, I guess to use the marketplace as your example, so you have your 4-hour maximum. If you pull into your parking space there and pull up the app and pay for 2 hours, you go off and you do what you need to do wherever you are. Let's say you come back after an hour and it didn't take you the full 2 hours, you refund that unused hour back into your wallet. Alternate scenario, let's say, your 2 hours approaches, 15 minutes prior to the expiry, you'll get a notification saying your parking's about to expire. Let's say you need another 2 hours so that you can come up to that 4-hour maximum. Wherever you are, you can do that and it will update and you won't receive a parking ticket.
Mr. Gaffney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. But can you, if you know your 4 hours is about to expire, or the notification comes up on your smartphone, can you then add time from wherever you are, like
For beyond 4 hours?
beyond 4 hours? Exactly.
Mr. Banter, I believe you would have to then either leave or move your car to a different spot with a different number on it. I believe. Mr. Bantock?
Through the chair, that's correct. So when we set up the app with the vendor, we provided them with all of our maximum parking times. So the code that's associated with the area or the spot you're in, the app knows how long you're permitted to park in that and won't let you exceed that under a single parking session. So if you already have used up your 4 hours in a single session, it doesn't give you that opportunity to extend within that same session.
Mr. Gaffney, go ahead.
Yeah, just so if and I may be getting a little too technical on this here. So if the time expires after 4 hours, like you see it's expired on your app, you go into your app, it would recognize that this is the same. I guess the license plate would be the same. I'm not sure what you enter when you apply for time on a meter. So maybe I'm just overthinking it. So, but I think I know how it's supposed to work. And so
I highly recommend you download the app and use it a bit, Councillor Gaffney.
Like I say, I've heard nothing but good things about the app. So, okay, thank you.
It has saved my partner many parking tickets in the last few months. So I'm very appreciative of that because I usually end up paying them. Anyways, moving on. Thank you so much. We'll move on now. Thank you, Mr. Bantock. Moving on to item number 6, which is report of the manager of environmental services. And we have item 6.1, which is extension of the water and sewage billing services agreement with Festival Hydro. And Mr. Rose, did you want to cover that report for us?
Through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yep. So in 2019, staff requested a 3-year billing services contract extension with Festival Hydro. Council at that time approved a motion to extend for 1 year, and that Festival Hydro produced a report that outlines the details of the structuring of the pricing and how it works. Then in 2020, there were delays due to COVID and some resignation of key staff at Festival Hydro, which delayed this report getting created. They then confirmed in mid-2020 that they were going to have a third party complete a review that would be available to us in 2021. So if you recall, I think it was my first management report with the city was the 1-year extension last year at this time. And so at this point now, in October, we were told by Festival Hydro that the third party review was completed. But at that time, the report had not gone to the Festival Hydro board yet. So therefore, no information has been presented to us at this time. So we are still expecting to get an executive report from them, or sorry, an executive summary of the report from them regarding the City of Stratford structuring. But in the interest of timing, with the current extension being up at the end of this year, they requested an additional year extension to give the city Festival time to review the report, to discuss it, and then come to an informed decision sometime next year and bring it back to council.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
If I can just note one, through the chair, if I can just note one more thing. It's not quite mentioned in the management report, but although the cost per invoice is not changing from $330 per invoice, the annual cost of this service does increase just because of the influx of residents that we're having now. So obviously we're getting more people moving to the city, more meters are being distributed by Festival, and more customers are coming online. So The invoice price itself will remain, but just with the volume of invoicing that they're doing, the overall annual cost of the service is increasing. I just wanted to point that out in case it wasn't clear.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gaffney?
And I know a question that's going to come up is that we've already given them a 1-year extension. They understand that there's not going to be any more, because I know there's one councillor that's quite anxious to have this discussion with Festival Hydro on how Festival Hydro charges Stratford. So you think we're going to get a report
Yes,
early in the new year?
Yes, through the chair, and potentially I can follow up, but potentially even before the end of the year, I may receive something from, like I said, an executive summary which outlines the Stratford portion of it. But the last I spoke, they still had to go to their board to present their full report, and then at that time, I think they would distribute to the other parties involved. So I am expecting a report hopefully before the end of the year, but I can certainly follow up and try to get a more firm timeline on that. But I would expect early next year, end of this year.
Okay, good, thanks. And I'll move that recommendation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I think we all know which councillor is very anxious to get this report back, because he's brought it up every year for a number of years. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you, Ms. Rose. So next item on the agenda is the capital project update. There was the quite extensive update circulated to us, but maybe Mr. Crinkle, you could hit some of the larger highlights in the report for us.
Absolutely, or some that have more interest to council. The Mornington Street construction work that's ongoing with the detours that are there. They're scheduled for paving December 7th. That might fluctuate a few days before or a few days afterwards, depending on weather and where they're at with construction. So that's where that sits now. There are still street sweepers out throughout the city collecting leaves at the curbside, even though not all the leaves have fallen. However, if residents need to dispose of their leaves collected from their lawns, we do have the Public Works facility working hours for those drop-offs. Another thing I'll just update you on is the water department experienced a significant water break on Griffith Road on November 15th that had staff working all night. This was a great testament to the knowledge and experience of our staff, who quite glad to say handled it quite well, and there was no notice to residents of the citizens. So it was a good event there. And just the other update is, or two updates, is the Huron Public Health and the city have now that online COVID wastewater surveillance hub, which is providing some data, and it's interesting to see how that's kind of getting a heads up on where our condition is for the that health unit. And the last thing I'll mention is that the Public Works has now updated their sidewalk snow removal maps. And this now includes the focus for school priorities, and as well as some other areas in the city to recognize that importance that we have there. So that's my update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Gaffney, then Councillor Seven.
Just an FYI, and you and I talked about this several weeks ago. I was driving down Romeo today, which, because of where I live, I do pretty much every day. The white delineation line on the east side is completely gone. There's 2 or 3 spots along the way, but right from Ontario Street to Vivian Street, it's gone. So
I've never seen anything like it myself. So, but we'll follow up through deficiencies with the contractor.
Thanks.
It was alarming and interesting to watch it fly off in like sections, like, you know, so then it was a dotted line, and yeah, it was, I've never seen anything like it either. And yet also Councillor Sabin, you're up.
Yeah, it looked like it was shattered, like it just, yeah.
Great. Thank you. I just was wondering about the COVID waste management. Is that something that is published like for the public to view as well, or is that an internal sort of a report that comes out every so often?
I'll refer that to the manager of environmental services.
Through the chair, there's no obligation for the health unit or the city to share that information. That being said, many municipalities are making that information public. At this point, it's certainly not anything we're opposed to putting public, but we've only received a few weeks of data and we just got put on the hub recently. So we're just kind of going through the first few stages of learning how to use the site and that sort of thing. But if it's something that council would like an update on or something like that, I'd be happy to kind of go through that and explain it.
Okay, great, thank you. No, I was just wondering, I guess, for members of the public too, if some people are more interested in that kind of thing than others. So just, but yeah, that'd be great. I guess at some point to sort of know what's going on with that. But whatever's appropriate is fine with me. So thank you.
I know that the city of Ottawa was reporting very early on, because they were one of the earliest adopters of doing their wastewater surveillance for COVID, and it just generated a lot of interest in the public, and it was just a really interesting project. I think this project's through it's through McMaster, and they may actually be publishing it. They may have a heat map, and you may be able to click and all that kind of stuff. But maybe more for our citizens, having something that we publish locally would be real. I think it'd be interesting for people to see. So.
Through the chair, yes. So the health unit, they get the Goderich wastewater treatment plant and the city of Stratford together, but I, for example, only have access to the city of Stratford one. So it's kind of up to Goderich what they choose to do with it, and the health unit as a whole, obviously. So, but yeah, you're correct. City of Ottawa, they've got a website specifically. It's just for that. It's not the City of Ottawa website. It's Ottawa 613 COVID surveillance. So they've gone really above and beyond for that. But yeah, certainly interesting. We can move forward with it. No problem.
Any other comments or questions on the Councillor Burback? Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question or just a comment for Mr. Krinklaw about the transportation master plan update. I was one of the people reviewing the RFPs, and I just can't remember if IBI Group flagged this in their proposal, but with all the discussion that we've had about the area around the festival and traffic and seasonal traffic issues that a lot of residents have flagged, especially around the areas, Coburg, King Street, all of those areas. I'm just hoping that they will flag to have some seasonal information or seasonal data or possible solutions to some seasonal traffic issues within the master plan, some possible fixes. Because I don't remember if it was their proposal, but one of the proposals did mention that as being something they could offer. So I just was hoping to put a bug in your ear to maybe mention that as well. I think that'd be really valuable for Stratford to understand seasonal traffic a little better. Thanks.
Any other? Oh, Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
My apologies, but again, I'm going to offer that should be in the form of a motion, and it should then go to full committee to discuss. But again, I'm not, I just giving staff direction. We've been told there's a way to do it. I think you've asked staff to take on but I'm not sure. I go with the caution, thing.
Before we make a motion for that, maybe Mr. Krinklaw, is something like seasonal traffic patterns around the theater, is that something that would be generally included in the transportation master plan? Is that sort of part and parcel of it?
Yeah, it's the chair. The transportation master plan will look at a higher level at the city overall and all its components, and there will be a public engagement piece where that can be taken into it. If there is a much greater study that wants to be done, that would be additional scope, and in that case, I would request a direction for that.
Thank you, and my apologies, Madam.
No, you're correct. Now that gives us an idea. So, Councillor Burback, do you think it's?
I think I think as we go through, I couldn't actually remember if it was already a part of that proposal, which is kind of why I asked the question. But yeah, if we can, like at the public engagement session, if that's something, if someone mentions to me about the tourist traffic, then I'll say to them, well, come to the master plan engagement session and make sure you mention it. I think that's a good way to deal with it. Thank you.
Yeah, and that would be a good public input piece. So then if we hear a lot about that, then that could be something flagged afterwards. Councillor Gaffney, you're correct that staff would bring back and say, we're hearing a lot of this. Maybe this actually does warrant spending extra money to scope a new. Okay, so is that sufficient for what you want? Perfect, everyone's happy. Okay, any other comments or questions on the capital project update? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 8 is advisory committee and outside board minutes, and we don't have any this time around. Our next subcommittee meeting will be in January. So last item is adjournment. Moved by Councillor Burbach. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye now.
Safe, everyone.